Hello! In today's video, we are going to be talking about the new epic hero that was just recently added to the game, and that is Tarra. Tarra is a overall and support hero, also has the gathering talents, but that's not what we're going to be talking about today. Aura's skills are very useful, but before we continue talking about Tarra, we should probably go ahead and unlock her. So, let's go ahead and rip open all of my gold keys. And then after this, I will go ahead and slowly do my silver keys, because I do want to track to see how many rewards I get from opening all my silver keys at once, compared to opening them 10 at a time. It looks like from this, I did not get a single Tarra, but I did get 2 Narronin. So I'm going to go ahead now and open my silver keys. I'm going to open 300 of them 10 at a time, and I'm also going to open another 300 of them all at once. I'll come back when I've done that. In order to completely awaken an epic hero, you will need 440 tokens, unlike 690 tokens for the legendary heroes. The math for that can be seen on screen now. If your goal is to use Tarra for PvP, I would highly suggest you max out her first skill and her second skill, and then open her up to 4 skills, and hope that you land in this final skill. It won't take very long to max her out, but as long as you max out the second skill, which is by far the most important one, she will be viable in PvP. In order to get a couple of extra hero tokens per day, remember to put Tarra here inside of your daily rewards, swap whatever you currently had awakened out, and put Tarra in instead. And then you can go ahead and complete your daily quests, and that will allow you to claim her every day. 2 extra heads, not bad. And as a reminder, one thing you can also do to get 10 extra sculptures for all of your heroes is to give them Sweet Dew. So when you complete this first story with them, they are most likely going to disappear from your city. Then you can go ahead into your hero selection, and you can directly gift them from here. So let's go ahead and gift her up to level 5. And then eventually she will appear back in the city. Looks like she did already. And when you do that, you can go ahead and skip through these stories, and you will get an extra 10 sculptures that you can use towards leveling her up. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my scroll wheel in order to level her up more quickly. If you don't have this, you can just drag up and down with your mouse or if you're on your phone, and it's still pretty quick. So let's go ahead and do this. Now max level. You're going to want to be careful with starring her up. As I mentioned earlier, you're only going to want to take her to 2 stars, and then you are going to want to max out both of these first 2 skills. And after that, take her to 4 stars, or even 5 stars would probably be better, and then work on maxing out the rest of them. And after we're done this, we will go ahead and take a look at some talents briefly, even though I would not recommend using her as a primary commander. But after that, we will take a look at some hero pairings, and when we do that, you're going to have quite a lot of options. So we've already maxed the first 2 skills, so now what we're going to go ahead and do is we are going to go ahead and start her up all the way to level 5. Seems realistic to me. Also, it looks like there isn't a limit on how many stars you can do now, so let's just put all of those in there. Now level 4, and after this she will be level 5. Very nice. And we did get a crit, it looks like, so we got 6 of these back. Yippee. Let's go ahead and spend the rest of our epic heads, and I will be back. I'm not going to force you to watch the rest of this, so I'll come back whenever I am done. So now let's go ahead and talk about some potential talents for this hero. What I'm going to suggest pretty much everyone does is that they go into the gathering tree. This hero wouldn't really do very well as a primary commander. Maybe if you're running 5 marches of the same troop type, you could use her as a primary. But I think you would be better served most likely by running 4 marches of one type and 1 march of a different type. So like 4 mage, 1 archer, 4 archer, 1 mage, etc. You might even want to put some infantry in there because infantry is very good in the open field. We do have a support tree here, so you could do this. Some of the rationale for what I did here is that I really like rage generation, and over here I went for the rage generation as well instead of the resistance, because normally your attacks are going to last very long, much longer than this 10 seconds. One thing that you could do is if you are going to play more of a poking style, you could take the March speed and this instead. But another reason why I wouldn't recommend taking this hero as a primary is that she doesn't have very much March speed. She has 10% March speed here, and she has 6% March speed here. And that's it. There is a haste effect up here, but this isn't reliable. So it's another reason why you shouldn't really go for this commander as a primary. We'd also take a look quickly at her overall tree. The one reason why this is appealing is you get this 10% Sev wound reduction, which is pretty nice. But still, it doesn't seem the greatest. You do still get a decent amount of rage when you go into this tree. But again, if you really want to use her as a primary, you can. One thing that might be nice to use her as a primary for is cavalry, because you do get this watchful eyes talent. But again, like, this is only if you're running 5 cav marches, I would say. And you are going to be struggling because you don't have your march speed on here, so maybe you have to put like Sorlin's Blade or Springbird Feather on her or something. One thing that might save Tarra when it comes to having low march speed is mastery skills. So you will be able to put a mastery skill in her 3rd slot once you enter the Season of Strife, so that could make her more viable as a primary commander, but I would still recommend you probably use her as a secondary. But now that I've suggested that, let's talk about some pairings. What you're probably going to want to pair with is heroes that aren't your top damage dealers. A lot of people have been suggesting pairing Tarra and Indus together. However, I don't really like either of their trees. They do have the same overall support tree. So if you just want to have one really low damage march, you could do this. However, I really like putting my Atheist and my Indus together because I think this is a very good rage engine. So one thing that I think makes more sense is to do Alwyn primary with Tarra secondary. Another option as well is Waldir primary with Tarra secondary. And the reasoning why I would be doing this is because I like having my Velen and my Alwyn paired together because they are a debuff march, and if you are a pay-to-win player, you can also use your Thea with your Velen, and if you're free to play, what a lot of pay-to-win players seem to forget is that our Theas aren't looking very good. I feel like I've gotten decently lucky on my keys, and my Thea is only 543, which isn't very competitive in the open field, not to mention that as a free-to-play player, you simply do not have the stars in order to actually star your heroes up. So as a pay-to-win player, there probably is a good rationale for using Tarra as a primary commander in a 5-march setup. However, even though I did run 5 marches last season, only 4 of them were mages, and I would still recommend, at least until we get Generation 4 mages, for free-to-plays to consistently run 4 marches of the same type max, until we get Generation 4 heroes. There could be an exception, potentially, if we get another new set of epics or even legendary commanders. However, Tarra is not good enough to be a primary commander, and as is, we barely have enough heroes to make 4 marches, let alone 5. And now if we move on to some additional troop types, one thing that we could consider here is infantry. How infantry tends to go is that the new heroes are meant to be paired together. So for example, you pair Goresh and you pair Skoll together, you pair Madeline and Garwood together, and what you can do now is you can pair Nika and Tarra together. This will give you 3 solid infantry marches if you're a pay-to-win player, and then in the next season we will also be getting the new heroes which are Dawnfell and Mogro or something like that. And those guys will most likely be designed to pair together as well, so that will give you 4 very effective infantry marches. And I'm sure you already know what you're doing if you're playing 4 or 5 infantry marches, and you're going to be running your Hosk in there and some other heroes as well, potentially. For archers, we do have some really cool synergy here, which I want to talk about, and that is this Keen effect. When we go into our artifacts, we do have the Heart of Kamasi artifact, which also gives you Keen. So I'm not sure if these cancel each other out, so it might be an anti-synergy. However, when you do have the Heart of Kamasi on, you have to remember that this cancels out your Rage skill. So if we're able to kind of ditch the Heart of Kamasi in order to use this skill instead, that would seem very good. So I'm not sure if this is actually a synergy or it's an anti-synergy. I'm pretty sure when effects are named the same thing, whatever one has the highest buff effect will take precedent. So since these are both 15% buffs, it looks like you most likely will only be able to get one unless you upgrade your Harakamasi, and then you get the 30% buff. So for a short period of time, you would actually overwrite this 15%. But again, it is temporary. So if you are going to be using Tarra with your marksman, make sure you remember that your Harakamasi will be slightly decreased in its effectiveness. So just keep that in mind. For pairings for archers, you're probably going to want to keep your Sindrian and Fragar together, and your Magrat and Zeta. And you're probably, if you're running a lot of archers, you have Kinara and Hosk or something like that, and Nico Guanwin. So maybe you can run a 5th March with like Craig and Tarra. That seems decent because Craig does do a lot of skill damage, and Tarra does buff skill damage by 20% when she is awakened. So there are quite a few things that you can do there with archers. And when it comes to cavalry, I'm not super interested in cavalry personally. However, you guys seem to have your own niche going on, so I'm sure you can figure out what to do here. There's probably a good way to use Tarra. However, as you can tell, since I don't have any of these 4 cav commanders unlocked, I personally would not be the greatest at giving advice for that. Since Tarra will be playing mostly a supportive role, it may make sense to put a Sand Lizard on her. I would suggest that if you are going to be using a Sand Lizard on her, you probably should put more skills than I have on mine. I still need to do this. I should probably do this today, actually, because we will have our fighting starting soon. But another option, too, is that you could just use a Sapphire Fade Drake. I probably wouldn't recommend a Shadow Fade Drake with her, just because she doesn't really do that much damage. However, you can get decent damage just with the Pain Bloom skill on a Sapphire. And if you're running her with archers, it probably is just a slam dunk decision to use the Sand Lizard. And if you're running her with infantry, I guess it probably depends on who the primary commander is. If you're going to be using a healing pet, maybe for a little bit of synergy. But most likely they'll probably be using the Venomous Lizard, or maybe even the new Moon Bear or something. I'm not exactly sure. And then with calves, you're most likely just going to be using your Golden Rocks to get the Passion effect. But yeah, that's about it. We did briefly mention the Harakamasi artifact and the Tear of Arbon, so Tear of Arbon is probably the best bet here, and then if you have it, I would put your Breath of Gigantus on your Atheist Indus. If you're not running Atheist Indus and you're going to be running Tarra Indus, you should definitely put the Breath of Gigantus on that instead. And then your DPS artifacts should probably be going onto your non-Tarra marches, because your Tarra march isn't going to do a lot of damage. It is just there to support you and grant that keen effect to your other marches, which is extremely powerful. And one thing that is smart to do is to use your Staff of the Prophet on her as well. This gives you 50% HP, which is really insane. If you compare it to other artifacts that give you 62% of stats, it's not quite nearly as much. However, HP is by far the best stat in the game, so it is comparable. And since you're not running Tarra to do a lot of damage, this might actually be better than the Tear of Arbon. It is 62% defense, so 62% defense and 50% HP is probably very comparable. However, I've not done the exact math, so you should probably go ahead and test these two side by side, do like an hour with one, an hour with the other, and see which gets you more merits. But obviously, when you are actually teleporting your marches, it would be a good idea to have this on that. And then for artifacts for other march types, like I said, probably doing something like a Springbird Feather or a Sorlin's Blade for Cav probably makes the most sense. You could still do the Heart of Kamasi for archers. However, remember that this will cancel out your hero's skills, so I'm not sure if this is actually very much value. One thing you could do is you could use your Heart of Kamasi somewhere else in the battlefield or on a different march. That way you get more coverage, because the Nara skill does only do keen to nearby marches, so you could do that. And then what's probably the best option actually is the Vila's Bow to deal the damage, and you can also silence the artifacts, which is pretty cool. And then you could have some epic options probably. I'm not sure exactly what, but if you're an archer player, you can figure that out most likely. Then for infantry, Greymoor's Warhammer would be pretty good, unless you have that on your Madeline Garwood. And then you'll probably just want a damage artifact if you don't have that. And then remember that regardless of what unit type, the one-time use of Staff of the Prophet on that march in order to teleport to the front line will always be a good choice. So I'm definitely a fan of Tarra. I have a feeling that she's probably one of the best epic commanders in the game. If you're just starting to play the game though, I would recommend maxing whatever your first epic is for your troop type whether that's Waldir or Guanwin, or maybe Alistair or Bakar, depending on what faction or unit type you're maining. Tarra might even be your third priority after, for example, Alwyn or Craig, because you really are only going to get a lot of benefit from Tarra personally after you have several marches in the field. However, if you don't care about your personal merits as much and you're more focused on the team doing well, I think that it does make sense to go ahead and get her as your second epic hero and use her in your second march. I'm very excited to start using Tarra in the field. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use her with my 3 different mage marches, with my Velen primary, my Atheist primary, and my Waldir primary. I'm going to go ahead and experiment to see where she fits best. It might make sense to use something like Thea Indis in the open field instead of Atheist Indis, and then use Atheist Tarra. I'm going to have to experiment with this to see what exactly is best, but I will report back on that after our fighting is over. We are about to start fighting in 5 hours, 4.5 hours, something like that. So I should be live streaming then. We'll go ahead and see if I am when it actually comes time for that. But anyways, Tarra, definitely a great hero. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.